Okay, let's see if we can make a difference this time and get the presentation to have some sound on it. And I can see my microphone bar going up and down, so hopefully that's working. Yep, everything looks okay. So this is part 1 of week 2, although they're the wrong way around. It doesn't really matter because they're independent of each other. We'll have a look at the preliminary project application, etc. Come on, change. There we go. Preliminary project appreciation depends on a management decision that you're actually going to pursue the project, as we mentioned in lecture 1. You've done an assessment of the project, both on its commercial and technical viability and requirements. You have all the data you need for the preliminary planning, as much as you can, some of that flowing from a feasibility study earlier on, and the outline designs. And you've got the development of preliminary plans underway. The decision to pursue a project, so the company senior management will generally consider the following factors. What's the profit likely to be? Does the opportunity fit in with the company's plans and their specialisms? How urgently do they need the work? Are they a bit light on work, or are they overstretched? Have they got expertise in this particular field? Could be shop fit-outs, multi-storey offices, care homes, they're all slightly different. Have they got previous experience with all the other parties to the contract? That can be very helpful, especially if you know the designers and the specialists and the client. There's a bit of respect going on maybe. If it's a competitive environment, have you got a reasonable chance of winning if you're going into a competitive tender? Depends who you're up against and what are the risks that are involved, be financial and resources, economic, environmental. So the preliminary planning, management and contractual stuff. Management requirements. The management of the company generally would seek assessments from the planner in the company, and their in-house planner, to give them a guideline as to the construction times that they can achieve this in, that should be specified, and whether they can achieve that or not, because the client may have specified that in the tender or the request for information. And what's the minimum construction time required that they can achieve? So that'll be their red line in the sand. They can't go below. In addition, they would normally, and in my experience always, sort out the resource levels needed, the quality of the work that's demanded. Obviously the quality in a high-class hotel is different to a backpacker's resort. The maximum and minimum cash flows they need to maintain to be able to undertake the project, and construction or financial alternatives to give them a competitive edge. Can they get finance at a cheaper rate, or can they construct in a quicker, cleverer way than their opposition? And the contractual requirements will also be heavily weighted on their minds. Some issues can have a big impact on a project. If you've got a site in the middle of a city centre, you're probably only going to have partial access to the site. You may not be able to cross adjoining land. There will undoubtedly be restrictions on the physical working times and how much noise and dust you can create. That normally means anything after about 5 PM in the week, and quite often you won't be allowed to work at the weekends. And can you hand over the work in partials? A partial handover of the work. You can hand over floor by floor as you finish a hotel. Then the decorators and the fitters can follow in after you. The commercial issues that they'd want. There are key issues that it says usually consider, but I would say always consider. They need to know the return on their investment. That could be a no-go decision very early on. Any opportunities to maximise their cash flows. Things like if they can have better purchase arrangements with material suppliers, maybe they can get them on a 90-day payment, whereas they're actually putting their claims of payment into the client probably every 28 days. So they're slightly ahead of their payment schedule. That would be quite useful. They'd have to borrow less money, pay less interest. Competition and knowledge of their situations. Are any of your competition overstretched? Have they lost senior staff recently? That's one that can come up quite often. Clients do ask for particular people by name sometimes. Your knowledge of previous dealings with the client. Were they a good client to work for? Or were they a bad client to work for? Like professional services for Queensland Government or Queensland Government Department can be very difficult to work for. And designers and other parties involved, architects, engineers, as they got the experience of this kind of project, and that makes a difference to it as well, how quickly and how cleverly they can do their work. And the client or the designer's admin structure. And we were talking a little bit about the matrix structure being quite common nowadays. Technical issues obviously raise their head. The amount of clarity and the completeness of the documentation. It's not unheard of for you to actually start construction whilst the engineers and architects are still designing some of it. And that can create enormous problems. There's an example of one where they were still designing it, but the contractor got the piled foundations and ring beams in, and because they'd changed the design a bit, the loadings had altered, and they had to go in and put additional piles in, which was an afterthought and very difficult to achieve. What about the political or the industrial or the commercial economic environment during the construction? You can have a change of political party halfway through, which could have a load of impacts on you environmentally or financially. Quite difficult in the present situation to raise funding from the main banks, maybe because the federal government's been clamping down on them a bit. Inclement weather. Where are you actually working? What time of the year are certain stages of the project going to be underway? So you would probably want to program your work so you're avoiding the wet weather. We can't avoid the sunny weather in Australia, but and what your, the contractor yourself, what your experience of the construction system is. Is there anything unusual? Was the architect come up with some lovely new idea that the engineer's struggling to make work? Your experience of these things, are these materials, the prefabricated sections coming from abroad? As soon as you end up with different suppliers and different technical designers working separately in different countries, you do raise the risk of tolerances being out. So most of the planning, and this sort of feeds into the assignments really, most of the planning, it commences with a work breakdown structure, a WBS, which at the preliminary level basically concentrates on levels 2, 3, 4 and 5. So the project, you've got to identify the major tasks, the subtasks, and then break it into work packages. A major task may be, if we're looking at domestic house, may be erecting the frame, timber frame, and a subtask would probably be installing the windows or maybe putting up a brick veneer, because that can't be done until the major task is done. So they're actually dependent on each other. And work packages, you can take similar, say, carpentry trades, and you can bundle them up into a package. Data required can come from many, many places. The most reliable data comes from in-house experience. This is why senior personnel are so important, and good record keeping is important. Also, you need to get reliable and experienced subcontractors and suppliers. Going overseas increasingly is beginning to cause problems, especially when you're getting materials that aren't exactly what you wanted. Cast your mind over to that horrific fire in London a couple of weeks ago, where the materials they clad it with apparently do not meet the building standards for the UK. Information related specifically to the project, i.e. the drawings, the specifications, bill of quantities, bill of materials, are they all there? Normal networking that takes place. So you really want to get the staff and the important people talking to each other. You can do that to a small degree with project team meetings, but it's much better to actually connect them. Electronically, people use share files and etc. more building information management systems that everybody is sharing, but it's not the same as actual face-to-face. And any other published information. And you can get it from journals, published books, online, there's loads of places you can get it from. Preliminary plans, so the construction plans are developed from the work breakdown structures. A load of techniques. So the plans for actually, done it in the drawings, in the actual project management plan, can include bar charts, Gantt charts, like Microsoft Project, critical path methodologies, lines of balance, flow line technology. We're going to look at all these briefly. I also direct you off to YouTube, where there's some really good technical presentations on each of these separately. I think they'd help you a lot. The chosen technique has got to meet the character of the work and support the level of detail and quality that that project needs. And that's all we wanted. This is just the second part of it. So if you've got any questions, put them on the Q&A forum. Just like somebody put it on there, because there was no sound with this last time. And let's hope this one works, but I'm sure you'll let me know if it doesn't. So see you hopefully tonight for the tutorial, just to discuss the course in general. The assignment briefs are up there online for you now, and I have made visible every section of the course now, but you'll find that there's nothing in some of them. Okay? But that lets you get to some of the resources.